So a bit about the movie. It's a true story of analysts within Wall Street that discover the collapse of the housing market in 2007, 2008. And it's also about people who are outside the financial sector as well that discover it as well. And it's really how they're trying to tell people about what's going to happen. But nobody's believing them, or they don't think it's ever going to happen because they think, this can't happen. The housing market's fine. Don't be ridiculous. You're just crazies.
Yeah, so based on the book by Michael Lewis. So it was based on a true story. The same guy who also wrote Moneyball. So he's obviously got kind of interested in money and predicting markets. And balls. But this movie didn't have much about balls.
No, loads about money.
Yeah. So yeah, it's based on the true story, which probably everybody knows what happened in 2008, but this kind of delves into quite a lot of detail, really, about how that came about and what caused the financial crash. Because everyone's heard that there was a financial crash, but I don't think a lot of people realise exactly what happened. And
even the movie says that. It's like, you know what happened, but you don't really know what happened, do you?
Yeah.
You have some kind of sound bite that you like to say.
Yeah.
You don't really know the ins and outs of it.
Yeah. So the film was directed by Adam McKay, who also wrote the screenplay.
Who's more known for Anchorman 2 and Step Brothers.
Get Hard.
Yeah, it's just like, he's more of a kind of comedy guy, and you're thinking this is a very serious movie about banking and finance.
In some ways I was quite surprised when I read the other films that he'd done, because I haven't seen any of those other films, because that's not really my...
You've never seen Anchorman?
That's not really my sense of humour. But everyone says I should watch it, but it's not really my kind of thing.
It might be. Well,
I wouldn't know because I've never seen it. I've seen clips of it.
I'm going to give you Anchorman. We're going off topic, but
in some ways, like, I was kind of surprised, but then other ways I could see like the humour here. Then he has a kind of comedic sensibility. It wasn't overly serious.
It had a lot,
except for some points.
It did have serious moments, but you're right, it did have a lot of humour in it, in a kind of dark way. But I thought that's part of, like, getting people into...
Christian Bale said that the reason he chose to do this film was because the director seemed so keen to do it. Like, he seemed so enthusiastic about this project. Like, I have to get this made. And apparently, I can't remember the film that he was doing before this, but they said, the film that he did before this, The Other Guys, I think it was... And they were saying, like, there's a bit in that where there's, like, financial stuff at the end of it. And apparently, like, when he was making that, all he could talk about was, like, this story about The Big Short. Because he obviously was so, like, I have to make this film. So enthusiastic. Talking about the cast, we had Christian Bale, who plays Michael Burry, who's an ex-neurologist. I think he used to be a neurologist, and then he goes into the financial markets. He has his own pot of money, Scion Capital, which he makes basically by playing the markets, and he's incredibly good at it because he can predict trends and he can read markets.
He's a numbers man.
But he was really good. Like, he did a really good portrayal.
Yeah, it was like Christian Bale as Michael was like really, really good, and he's sitting in his office listening to speed metal and Metallica and drumming away, and he's not wearing shoes. Yeah, he's really, you just think, he's really just, he has a weirdo. Yeah, but in a really good way. I mean that, but
it was really good science fiction books and things. Yeah, no shoes on.
Yeah, he looks like the best boss in the world, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he played him really well. Like, you can find clips online of the real Michael Burry, so to kind of compare.
I've not seen that, but you have.
Yeah, it's not like he's doing like an impression of him or take of him, but you can kind of see, it's pretty close. Like, he does a good job of portraying him, and he's probably one of the most likable of like the main characters. That was the thing with this movie. Like, the guys you're supposed to be rooting for are actually betting on people losing like their jobs and houses and everything. So in some ways you're like, I hope they win it. Like, well, you kind of know they win it. You're like, that's really good what they're doing. But then another way, it's like they're not really good guys. No, they're all multimillionaires as well. Yeah,
they're not good guys. But a lot of them know they're not good guys, and they feel bad about it. So Steve Carell.
Yeah, Steve Carell
doing another serious part.
Yeah, after Foxcatcher, which I think
he was really good in Foxcatcher.
Yeah, that kind of shocked a lot of people that he was able to do a serious role like that.
He was fantastic in Foxcatcher.
And the same here. Like, a little more humour in this one than that. He's not a murderer. But yeah, he plays a really good guy. Mark Baum, again, a real character. and he's basically just really angry about what's happening.
Yeah.
And he really doesn't like the big banks and the way that money's kind of screwed out of the little guy.
Yeah.
And he's like a crusader almost for like tightening up the markets, I guess.
Yeah, he plays, I'd say, like, Christian Bale and Steve Carell are probably the two main guys.
Yeah.
Because we'll come on to who else is in it in a minute, but they're the two kind of main. They've got the most screen time.
Yeah.
And they have the strongest performances.
Steve Carell, like, you learn more about his family in the film as well, and his personal situation.
Yeah, it's hinted at. It's hinted at a lot more.
And I think he the first one that was introduced in the film. Like, that's the first guy that you learn about. Oh, it might be him or Michael Burry that was the first one.
I think Ryan Gosling's the first guy you hear from.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because he's the narrator.
But they're like the ones who the first ones to kind of. Oh, actually no, Ryan Gosling's the first one who finds out about the trends. I think. Christian Bale is Christian Bale's the very first.
Figures it out like he's ahead of the curve.
So yeah, we should talk about Ryan Gosling probably because he is a kind of, like you say, a narrator through it, and yeah, that's one thing that I said to you about this film. I thought from the trailers it was going to be more the guys would all come together as one group, but they don't.
Spoilers, they don't.
Yeah. It's not really spoiled, but in the trailer, like Christian Bale and Steve Carell, you think like they meet, but I don't think they ever meet in the film. No. They all, at one point, all the characters end up in Las Vegas, I think, but that's like they don't actually have any interactions. But Ryan Gosling plays a banker, Jared Bennett. And yeah, he was really good. Like, kind of just a really greedy guy, basically. Just
but he's completely honest. He's completely honest about what he's doing. He's not hiding the facts. What he's.
But he's the most, like, he really does not care that the market's about to crash. Just he only likes the fact that he can make a lot of money out of it.
He just thinks you're right.
Like, Steve Carell feels bad, and Christian Bale kind of feels a little bad. But he's more... Christian Bale's just, like we say, just about the numbers. Like, all he does is sees the trend and says, yeah, that's going to happen. Like, I would be stupid not to bet against that. But he doesn't really have any sense of, like, interest or disinterest. It's just, it's the best way to make a lot of money.
They also make Ryan Gosling look pretty different in this movie.
Yeah, he has a lot of fake tan on. Yeah. I didn't really recognise him. I think he has his hair dyed as well, and a lot of fake tan.
He looks very different in this movie, but he's very entertaining, like, as his character. He's just obsessed with money, and he's very happy when he's making it.
Yeah, it has a lot of funny lines as well.
And then there's Brad Pitt playing Ben Rickert, who's this really kind of outsider of everything. He doesn't like banking anymore. Yeah. He doesn't like finance. He wants to eat seeds.
He used to be like a top banker, but I think he became disillusioned because it was like just a horrible environment to be in. Just
the reality of what the cost of it.
And he's kind of like a conspiracy theorist, I think, in the film. Not like serious, but he has a definite like, oh, they're like the markets are all against us and like things are rigged and there's a lot of bad things that happen.
I don't know.
Because there's a bit in it where like the guy calls him on the phone.
Yeah, I think
he's like, don't call me on this phone.
He just thinks he's being monitored.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's like a little bit paranoid, I think, because he realises what's going on.
And there's two kind of lesser guys. I think it's I can't remember the name of their company, but Jamie and Charlie.
Brownfield. It's like Brownfield Investments or something.
Like that, yeah.
Brownfield something.
And they're kind of to a lesser extent involved. And Jamie is played by Finn Whitrock, which is a fantastic name for an actor. So congratulations to Finn Whitrock.
That's more of a character name than his actual character's name.
And then there's Charlie Geller, played by John Margaro.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. I think that's how.
Sorry, John, if I got that wrong. You're not listening anyway, or maybe you are. Maybe it's a slow day in the acting world.
Yeah, but those two guys, I really was rooting for because they start out with like a small pot of money and build it up. Yeah. And the first time we see them, they're trying to get in at like a bank so they can get into investments, like making big investments, but they're not allowed.
And they laugh them out the building.
Yeah, and then they kind of hear about this. The housing market's about to crash, and so they decide like, oh, we should put all our money in this. It's kind of a risk. I don't know if the film really emphasised that it was a risk to them. Like, you kind of felt like, because they were so confident that it was definitely going down.
I don't know if, like, there was moments that they were not confident. The only people who really stayed confident throughout it was Christian Bale and Ryan Gosling, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like, I'd say, like, Jamie and Charlie were like, oh, we're either going to be really, really right or incredibly, incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
And we'll lose everything. So I think that the others had shaky moments, but like Ryan Gosling believed it.
Yeah. And so Brad Pitt's character is like helping those two. Yeah, like he's their neighbour. I think.
Their mentor. Yeah, he is one of their neighbours too.
So he kind of helps them get in on this. Yeah. So the film as a whole, I thought it was pretty entertaining.
We talk about the style. Because you thought the style was quite weird because it's kind of documentary at moments, isn't it? Yeah,
it was one of the weird things about the film because it has to explain a lot to even start understanding really what's going on. They do have to explain a lot, which they try and do in a fun way with like little asides. Like you have Margot Robbie in a bathtub explaining what a CDO is, a collateralized debt obligation is.
One of your favourite scenes.
You have a chef explaining how they repackage like bonds that haven't sold and then resell them as something that they're not. And who was the other one? Selena Gomez and the Economist guy.
Yeah, there's loads of little cutaways that a lot of people didn't like.
Yeah, a lot of cutaways. And like the first time we see Ryan Gosling, he does a thing with like a Jenga tower to explain how there's AAA mortgages down to B mortgages.
He talks to quant.
Yeah. There's like a lot of like fourth wall breaks as well. Like even at the very beginning, you see Ryan Gosling just turn to the camera. Yeah. He's at a party and he like turns to the camera and says like, "Yeah, I wouldn't ever have been at this kind of party. Like this is just for the movie.
I know people in fashion. I wouldn't have hung around with these guys."
Yeah, but it was a kind of weird film in that sense because part of it you're watching it just to understand what happened, and then the other part you're watching it to see like more of a drama, like the guy's stories.
Yeah, there is that too, but I think it's good that a director that's maybe more well known for comedies and stuff has went to this kind of serious topic and still kept the comedy value in it, but it's got people interested in a subject that they necessarily wouldn't have went to the cinema to see. Yeah, but it makes it difficult to judge the film because I kind of think if I'm judging it as a documentary, then it was great. As like a really good job of like explaining everything quite simply and getting a lot of information across in an entertaining way. But then if you're judging it as a film, it's like, yeah, those bits are really odd because the film just stopped. It'd be like, say something like The Social Network, which is also based on a true story. It'd be like if that just had cutaway scenes where the character suddenly said, yeah, this is how like Facebook works, or this is how I designed this part of the program. It'd be really odd because you're like, is this meant to be a drama or a documentary? It didn't take me out of the film though, because it kind of, for me, it just highlighted the fact that this was real and this was really affecting people, and this was like it was a kind of powerful tool of saying this isn't a movie. Don't forget this is actually reality, and people were affected by this, and loads of people lost their jobs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be divisive. Like you're either going to go with it and just enjoy it, or you're going to keep thinking like, yeah, that's a little odd.
I went with it. I fully embraced it.
I enjoyed it. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. It's just that I just wasn't expecting it, or you're maybe not used to it.
Some of the bits where it was like, let's have this person to explain this. I didn't love that so much. But the bits where they turned to camera was like, this is what actually happened. I didn't mind that at all. I didn't mind those bits.
Yeah, the fourth wall breaks.
Yeah, I didn't mind that at all.
Kind of good. The explanations, again, it was just like a weird way. And also, the one thing, like, if there was a negative in that, it was the fact that they did, like, so many different things, and it was always kind of weird. It's like when Ryan Gosling was talking at the start, like, they'd have, like, they explain what a tranche is, came up on screen.
They'd be text on the screen.
And they explain what a CDO was, came up on screen. But they didn't really use that technique later in the film, even. And it was like... Yeah, they'd use different techniques. Like, there's the scene where he's talking to the guy who's in charge of CDOs, and there's a laugh track playing in the background. But it was like, that was the only time they did it. So just, to me, it was a little weird. I wouldn't have minded, like, if they'd have just kept doing cutaways, and like, oh, that's the style of the movie. It does a lot of cutaways. Like Family Guy. But it was the fact they did, like, different things, but then sometimes the things didn't appear again. That was what was weird.
For me, it didn't bother me because they had like bits, they'd like splice in bits of news. They'd have interviews. There was music videos. There was clips. Yeah, like all just interspersed. There was the text on the screen, like you're saying. So there was loads of stuff that I really liked.
Like, the beginning and the end, they just show you a load of pictures of like the 70s and 80s and 90s. Like basically say like, oh look, this is like time was passing. Which is kind of an interesting technique.
I didn't mind that or the style, because I know you didn't like the kind of shaky camera and the stuff like that, but I thought it all worked really well.
Well, the camera was, again, like highlighting that it's a documentary style. It was as though, look, you're watching real people here, this really happened. And then other scenes would be more of a cinematic style. I've seen a review somebody did of this, which said, actually, the film is genius, like, much better than people think it is, because if you watch it, the idea is that when it's documentary style or cinematic style, that's kind of helping you visualize what you're meant to be feeling. Like, are you meant to be feeling more involved or more detached from it? So there's a scene, the guy I talk about it was the scene when Michael Burry's speaking to Goldman Sachs, and then it's documentary style when it's kind of, he's really serious. And then it goes more cinematic. Cinematic when he's really serious, and then more documentary style because they're not taking him seriously. So it's like, it's a more relaxed style. So the guy said, if you watch it, it's like really clever. But I think, you're either going to see it like that, like, it's genius what they're doing, or just like, that's a little weird. And I'm not sure I like it.
I've watched it a couple of times now, and the first time it was like mildly off-putting. Not a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't really bothered by it, but the second time I was like, I thought it worked really well.
Yeah.
And I can't really fault it. And it was also a very funny movie. And they're kind of poking fun at things, especially like the scene where they go to the ratings agency and this woman with the dark glasses.
Yeah.
And she refuses to believe them. She's like, no, there's nothing wrong with the bonds. There's nothing wrong with the CDOs. And she's just completely blind to it, and she's in the dark glasses. I was like, that's a bit too on the nose, but very funny.
Yeah, that was the only thing to me. It was really on the nose. you're either going to find it funny and like, because she's like her eyesight's bad.
She refuses to see it.
That's why she can't see it. Yeah. But I thought like that's ridiculous.
No, I thought it was good.
It's supposed to be like a satire, but that's just way too over the top.
I liked it. They never know. They never said like this didn't happen or it didn't happen, so I'm assuming it didn't. But they usually have somebody going, this didn't actually happen. But I liked it nonetheless.
I mean, it made me laugh that they did that. But yeah, it was like a little over the top.
Yeah. Soundtrack wise, music wise, I thought it was great too. It had Guns N' Roses, Nirvana, Metallica, Neil Young, and Led Zeppelin. So I was very happy listening to the soundtrack.
Yeah, there was like some great music used all the way through it, and I suppose kind of highlighting the atmosphere.
Yeah, I think it really helped all
atmosphere,
especially like at the end when they play Levy Breaks. With Led Zeppelin, because they think like nothing's changed, and if it's just going to keep happening unless we change the way the banks work and stuff.
They kept, like we said, like the tone of the movie was kept pretty light throughout. There were a couple of bits that I found a little jarring, but again, this is one of those things you're either going to like that they did it, or you'd think like that's really weird that they suddenly did that. There's like a scene when Brad Pitt explains that 40,000 people die every time unemployment goes up 1%. And there's also a scene with Steve Carell, like he has a kind of tragic backstory as well. Yeah, and there's some parts where it just suddenly goes from like very funny to like, that's really tragic. What happened? Like you're either going to find the shift in tone disconcerting, or you're just going to think, that's good that they managed to mix those two things together.
I think it worked quite well. I'm a big fan of this movie. Me and Bernie Sanders watching The Big Short, being really angry.
But yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend the movie if you want to understand like what happened with the housing market crisis. But to me, it was more that I didn't really get a sense. I mean, like we said, there's a few main characters in it. It's following a few different people's stories, so there's a lot to maybe get through, and also to explain what's happening at the same time. But it was more like they didn't. Like I know they cut some scenes out with Michael Burry's family. And there was probably some other bits they cut out, but it felt like you never really saw the guys in their lives.
I think you had enough of the hint of what was going on, and it was more about the actual crisis and the finances of it more than the individual people and how it affected them, because they were really not. Yeah. They were not the nicest of characters, because it is essentially those guys gaining off the misery of the world.
But that's what I'm saying. That's more like, again, with the documentary thing. Yeah. It's more saying like this was an event that happened, and these are this is how it happened, the event, rather than a regular film would be more like, this is the guy at home, and then this is why you should care about him, and then the event happens, and then you see the aftermath of it.
There is a bit of that, but I mean the aftermath is now. The aftermath is now. But I think you had enough of like Christian Bale. Steve Carell had the most kind of backstory. I would say Steve, because he's got to see his wife, you know about his past with his brother, and he's angry, and he goes to his therapy session, and he's storming about the place. But you're right, there isn't a lot of that in the background, which, if you're looking for that, then that's maybe not the film for you.
Yeah. But I enjoyed all the stuff with Steve Carell, like going to the housing complex where the prices were going up, and then they'd leveled off, and people couldn't sell their houses.
And you meet the guy and his little daughter, and they're looking for the landlord, and it's the landlord's dog that's actually the name on the mortgage thing.
Yeah, because people were just like, there were no background checks, people were getting mortgages for nothing.
And later on you see that guy living in his car, so there's kind of the cost to that guy.
Yeah.
Like you see that human kind of cost that you don't sometimes get in movies.
It is an interesting story. Like, after I watched it, I watched a couple documentaries on, like, the mortgage crisis, like subprime loans crisis, and it is kind of an interesting story, but you do have to get your head around, like, who's lending money to who and what's happening. One of the issues I had with the film, with the story, like, towards the end, was I was starting to get a little bit confused, because there's a scene when he goes in and the bank's trying to explain to him that, like, you're betting against us, so, like, you'd lose the money, or, like, we'd lose the money, we'd go bankrupt, so we wouldn't be able to pay out to you. Yeah, it got a little confusing of, like, who was loaning money to who, and were they going to get the money back. And there's no scene, like, kind of a spoiler for the end here. There's no scenes at the end where you see the people in, like, a lavish house or a boat and, like, oh, look how much money I made. You see them with a check.
You do have the little bit of text on the screen that tells you what happened to each of the main guys, but there's you don't get.
Yeah, you don't see, like, oh, they became really.
But that would have just. But you do find out. I think that would just take away from it if you see all them just running around in yachts and stuff.
But that's the thing. It's like not, in a sense, it's not a positive ending. Like,
no, but because they're not good characters. Essentially, a lot of them didn't like what they'd done. I think.
Well, yeah, they were betting again. They were betting on people's misery, basically. Yeah. People caused a lot of pain to a lot of people, and they profited from that. Yeah. So
it wasn't like they caused it, but they just benefited from it.
Yeah, but yeah, it is kind of a crazy film.
One of the bad points I would say is there's lots of jargon about bonds and CDOs and stuff. So if you're not really into that, but it's explained in a fun way at the same time. So that's a small negative for me, but
no, I like that. I like that they didn't. I mean, they didn't over...
Just the jargon in general is a negative. Like, but I mean, if you're going to do a movie about that, you've got to have it. You can't just gloss over it.
They didn't oversimplify it, but like you say, they did it...
They did dumb it down a lot. They had Margot Robbie in a bath.
They did it in, like, a fun way. The Margot Robbie in a bath, it was like... The weird thing about that was, it didn't make it any easier to understand just the fact that she's in a bath. Like, having the Jenga blocks, or like talking about this is old fish and I'm going to make it in a fish stew tomorrow, that's a visual metaphor that you can understand and it makes it simpler. But the Margot Robbie in a bathtub, it was like, it made no difference because she's still just saying the same thing that he could have said.
She simplified it. And for a lot of people, just her in a bath is going to sell tickets.
It's probably just more distracting. You're just like, I have no idea what she just said, but I know that it was Margot Robbie in a bathtub.
Yeah. So if you like Margot Robbie in a bath, go see this movie. But we should have said at the start, DVD and Blu-ray. It's out on DVD and Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, it's out now on DVD and Blu-ray.
We've got the Blu-ray. There's some good extra stuff on the extras as well.
It's definitely an enjoyable movie. Even though the subject matter might turn people off, but I would say don't be put off by that because it is interesting and a lot of humour in there, even if you don't find the subject particularly exciting. Yeah,
I mean, it's a hard sell to get people to go to a movie about banking and finance, but it's got a really good cast and some really good performances. And if you're looking for a DVD or a Blu-ray, go and get it.
Yeah. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back next time with a review of
Nice Guys and Warcraft.
Yeah.
Separately.